All right, hello, welcome everyone. Welcome to ELTOC, or welcome back to ELTOC if you joined the previous sessions a few hours back. And also welcome to anyone who's watching this as a recording on YouTube or Facebook, wherever it may be. Welcome to everybody. I'm glad so many teachers could be here to join us today. We've got loads of people in the room already and more joining every second. And I'm really happy to have everyone here today to share this wonderful event. My name is Joshua. I work for Oxford University Press based in Tokyo, and I'll be your host for the sessions today. Let me know where you're joining from. I see people from Argentina, Mexico, Brazil, all over the world. Loads of people from Asia as well. Yeah, pop in the chat, in the comments, let us know where you're joining us from, and how's the weather? It's nice and sunny here in Tokyo, so I hope you have a nice sunny day as well. This webinar is just one of the services that Oxford University Press provides to teachers, so I thought you might want to know a little bit more about us before we get started. So Oxford University Press is the world's authority on English language. As part of the University of Oxford, we're committed to furthering English learning worldwide. We continuously bring together our expertise, experience, and research to create resources helping millions of learners of English achieve their potential. So again, thanks for joining us today. If you are interested in a certificate, there will be certificates available for this block, or not for this block, for this event. Just go ahead and click the link in the chat, which someone will put in there, or this QR code. Where is it? There it is. This QR code in the top of the screen. You can scan that with your phone and make sure you tap or click the link that says claim your certificate. Submit your details and you should be able to get a certificate shortly. It'll be about within 10 business days. So make sure you do that if you want a certificate for the session. Also, we've got a wonderful program today, so do share this event with other teachers. You can share that by email, Facebook, Twitter, WhatsApp, whatever you're using. Make sure you share the event with other teachers and invite them to join and take part in this wonderful event. So let's have a look at the schedule for this block. We've got 3 wonderful sessions, and I will go through that in a minute. But first, just a note on the first session. Apologies, but June Lee is not available for today's session. He had some circumstances unavoidable. So we've got Andrew Allen will be filling in for June. So that will be the first session. It's extensive reading, what, why, and how, but with Oliver Bailey and Andrew Allen. So they'll kick off the block. After the first session, will be followed with session 2, which is climate change in the ELT classroom, and that will be delivered by Zarina Zubon and Colin Downs. We'll take a short break after that, and then we'll wrap up ELTOC with the third session titled Fingers plus Thumbs equals Communication Fun, and that'll be delivered by Christopher Sheen. So we've got a wonderful lineup. Do stay tuned for the entire block, and make sure you comment in the chat, take part in the conversation, and have a bit of fun as well. So where's everyone joining us from? Let's have a look at the comments again. I saw Argentina. Oh, there's someone from Serbia now, Colombia, all over the place, Georgia, Chile. Wow, we've got teachers from everywhere. It's wonderful to have such a diverse range of people in the room. Well, before we get started, I'll just say a few words. So I know learning English isn't easy. I've been in Japan for 10 years and I still struggle daily to find the right words and follow the conversation at times. But so I can sympathize with everyone in the room that's spent the time to learn a second language. I know most of us are English teachers at some point in our lives. And yeah, I know basically just learning English isn't easy. I realize that. And we have to make unfamiliar words, unfamiliar sentences. You have to speak in front of people, training your mouth to make those strange sounds. You have to be ready to get it wrong and accept someone correcting you, even when you're trying your very best. There's just nowhere to hide. So, but anyways, we keep trying. Every mistake corrected is one less you'll make the next time. Each word mispronounced is one you remember in the future, and each conversation that gets lost somewhere in the middle will take the right track next time you come across it. And why do we do this? Because when you make yourself understood, when you find the words, that moment is magic. And you become part of the conversation, and the next step is yours to take. So, to capture that magic moment, we prepared a short video which we'll show during the exhibition break. So, please do stay tuned for that. And we've also asked some of the speakers to introduce their magic moment when they found the words. So, they'll be doing that as they start their sessions. But also, we'd love to hear your stories, your moments when you found the words. So, throughout today's session, feel free to post in the comments your moments. And if you do, use the hashtag find the words. So we'll be monitoring the chats, and we'd love you to share your stories with us. Also, we've created a series of short free teaching and learning resources to help you and your students find the words. So you can help them find the words and celebrate those moments when everything comes together. We've got lesson plans for young learners, teenagers, and adults. They're all available on our website and completely free. So again, click that QR code in the corner or find the link in the chat and take advantage of those free resources we've prepared. All right. Well, we're just about ready to kick off our first session. So ELTOC Chapter 4, Day 2. We've got our first session with Ollie Bailey and Andrew Allen on extensive reading. So the discussion will focus on how extensive reading can help students of different ages improve and consolidate their English skills. They'll talk about why extensive reading is important and why it should be known to all English teachers. So we're really happy to kick off the session. And I will give our speakers a quick introduction. So Oliver Bailey, he's taught a wide range of students, including kindergarten, primary, secondary, and adults in his more than 20 years of experience in the publishing industry and 25 years spent living and working in Asia. He's created and delivered professional development workshops and seminars for thousands of teachers across the region, and he's here to share his knowledge and skills with us. And then also Andrew Allen also works in the professional development team. He's the professional development services manager and has worked in English language teaching for over 20 years as well. Most of that time in Asia, but he spent some time in the Middle East and North Africa as well. He also has a wide range of experience teaching all levels and ages of students. And he's worked extensively on teacher training programs and corporate and vocational training courses. He's also been an IELTS examiner and trainer. So loads of experience for both of our presenters to share. So I'm going to go ahead and bring them on screen. And so please do join me in welcoming Andy and Andrew on screen. Hello, guys. How are you doing?
Hi, doing great. Hi there, Josh. Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, great.
Andy, there's Andy. Hello, Andy. All right, I will go ahead and leave it to you guys.
Can I just check that you can hear me and see me?
Yep.
We can hear you, Andy. Yes. All right, over to you guys.
Okay, great. Well, lovely to see you today.
I think I've
Andy,
got some
great to be
connection
working with you.
issues. Sorry, I can't hear what's happening there.
Oh, okay.
Let me see if I can just fix that. And in the meantime, I'll hand you over to Ollie.
Okay, so hope to have you back soon, Andy. So I think everybody on the stream has probably, if you've taught online, you've dealt with these kinds of technical issues before. Hopefully, Andy will be back again soon. So my name is Ollie, and thank you, Josh, for the kind introduction. It's fantastic to be working with you all today here at ELTOC. And in this session, we're going to be looking at extensive reading, what, why, and how. So to kick us off, maybe in the chat there, you could just tell us a little bit about what kinds of students you teach, what age or levels. Let me know in the chat just so I can make sure the chat is working. Tell me a little bit about yourself. And while you're doing that, just to let you know about me. So I taught for a few years in Japan before joining Oxford University Press. I've always really enjoyed reading personally. It's taking me to places and worlds and all kinds of places I could never go ordinarily. So I've been interested in reading for a long time. But today we're going to look at extensive reading, and but in particular, want to talk about extensive reading because it's a tool for teachers that is close to my heart. And I think for many of us, it's a missing tool. We teach reading in many different forms, but extensive reading tends to be less well known. And it has all kinds of positive impacts, as we'll see. It helps students with their vocabulary, and so it kind of helps them find the words that they want to use for writing, for speaking, for any aspect of English. And it also provides enormous value for money, or bang for the buck, as we would say. So I'm just going to check over on the chat there, and I can see we've got many of you teach primary, but some of you also teach undergraduate and postgraduate students as well, which is fantastic. Students from 11 to 14, so teenagers too. And this brings me to a really important point about extensive reading and why I think, or we think, it should be in every teacher's toolkit, whether you're working with adults or anyone else. And that is that it's relevant to all ages and all abilities of learners, whether they're at C2 on the CEFR, nearly fluent, just starting out. And I think this is another reason why I want to talk about it today, because it brings so much to so many different ages and abilities of students. Okay, so let's move out of this first introduction, and I'm going to go on to this section about what is extensive reading. Now, you can see on the screen here a quote from the Extensive Reading Foundation, which is one of my go-to resources for learning about extensive reading as a teacher. And I'd like you to just read that quote to yourself quietly if you're in a public space. I'm not going to read it out to you because you can read faster than I can read it out. So for the sake of efficiency, read it to yourself and then just type in "finished" in the chat window. And while you're reading, I want you to pick up 2 or 3 key phrases or words and also drop those into the chat window for me as well. And I'll monitor the chat as we go through there. Okay, so a couple of you are saying you've finished, which is great. If you've finished, remember, pick up a couple of the key words or phrases that stand out to you and drop them into the chat for me. Okay, I can see more people have finished. Okay. Well, while you're thinking about that, let me pull out a couple of the keywords or phrases that really stand out to me in here. Let's see if we agree. And I can see some of you answering now. So for me, keywords here are large amount of books. And I'll talk in a minute more about these ideas, but key ideas: large amount of books. Easy for them to understand, easy for students to understand. And another one, right at the end, without having to look up words in a dictionary. Without having to look up words in a dictionary. Okay, so it's important just to get a quick overview of what extensive reading is as we start today. So let me pick up a few ideas from this as we go through. And the first one is that in extensive reading, the key idea is we learn to read by reading, right? By reading as much as possible. That will improve our students' reading skills. Now, when it comes to reading and extensive reading, you might use what we would call graded readers. Okay, and I have some here. This is Robin Hood. This is just an example of a graded reader by Oxford University Press. I'm not going to talk about the books themselves too much, but These are carefully graded and carefully written materials using a controlled vocabulary to make them easy to read for students and divided into particular levels. And you can find out more information about graded readers themselves on any Google search. But let's quickly look at the key principles. And there are 4 key principles of graded reading I want to touch on in this segment. The first one, as mentioned, is that the graded or the reading material is easy. Okay, and as teachers, sometimes this seems a little bit counterintuitive to us. Why would we pick something that's easy for students to read? Well, we want to make the reading approachable, and so reading material is easy is a really important principle. And a bit later, when we look at activities, I will share the 5-finger rule to help you choose the right material. And there's Andy. Andy, you're back. Hello. Can we hear you? Looks a bit laggy. Can you hear me, Andy? Okay, I will let Andy kind of come in when he possibly can, but I'm going to keep going forward for now. So the second key principle is that we want to provide the students a variety of reading material. Lots of different options to read. So in true extensive reading, the students, and this is the third principle, will choose what they read themselves. They might have a favorite genre. They might have a book with a cover that they really like. But students choosing what they read is really important. And this links into learner agency, the idea that we're giving them the ability to make their own choices for their learning. So the second one was a variety of reading material. The third one was learners choosing what they read. And the fourth one is, excuse me, learners reading as much as possible. So as teachers, we often think, or we often say that, well, if we want students to improve their listening skills, we need to give them as much listening input as we can. And reading is exactly the same way. In extensive reading, the students read as much as they possibly can. Ideally, large or even massive amounts of reading throughout the course or throughout the year. And one way to remember this, some of these principles, is to use the acronym READ, R-E-A-D. Read quickly and enjoyably with adequate comprehension, so they don't need a dictionary, R-E-A-D. You can find out more about this and many of these principles on the Extensive Reading Foundation website, and of course from Oxford University Press as well. Now, before
Hi, Ollie. I think I've got connection again. Sorry to interrupt.
No, Andy, you're back.
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks. Sorry about that. There's always some connection issue, but it seems to be fine now.
It always happens.
Yeah, sure. Ollie, I was quite interested in something you said then about the reading text should be easier than your level.
That's right. Yeah, so this is often kind of counterintuitive for teachers and students, because we often think that having something that is above the student's level is going to challenge them and help them. But the point of extensive reading is to read large amounts of content so they improve their fluency. And so providing them with reading that is at or slightly easier than their level means that we're not impeding them with content that's too difficult. If the students have to stop and look up words in a dictionary all the time, then they won't read fluently. And this is where that notion of ease is really important. And as I mentioned, I'll share the 5-finger rule when we look at activities for choosing the right level of book. But you're right, Andy, it is a key point. And just before we go on, and we look at the benefits of extensive reading with Andy, let me just quickly add in there. I do want to say before we go on, it's important to point out that as teachers, we're all familiar with intensive reading, so reading closely. And today we're talking about extensive reading. But these things are not in conflict. We're not saying today that extensive reading is better than intensive reading. What we're saying is that both kinds are valuable for different purposes. And if I had to quickly summarize this before we go on, I would say that it's the difference between learning to read and reading to learn. So when students do
That's a
intensive
nice way to
reading,
think about it.
yeah, when students do intensive reading, they're reading to learn the language, the grammar, the vocabulary. Extensive reading is about learning to read by reading. And I think that's a good way to think about it. So Andy, I think we were going to also try and squeeze in the benefits of extensive reading. Do you want to talk a little bit about that or lead us into that?
Sure. I mean, I suppose, from my personal experience, I mean, I've got 2 kids at home, and obviously, we try to encourage them to read for pleasure, and we've had some quite successful experiences with that, and we really do. I really do see the benefit from their reading, and in terms of the vocabulary that they use. And even if they don't understand vocabulary at the point of extensive reading, quite often it can plant the seed that comes to learning that vocabulary later. So I see lots of, so I've witnessed lots of benefits around that. But I think, Ollie, you probably know more about those benefits in the context of an ELT classroom.
Oh, well, sure. I mean, I think exactly what you mentioned is important, Andy. Before we go on, I just want to pick up something on the chat where one of our participants said, Ollie talked about the acronym READ, R-E-A-D, but they missed the A. So the acronym READ stands for read quickly and enjoyably, that's the E, with adequate comprehension. A is adequate comprehension. So they don't, that's a D, need a dictionary. So let's just hop back into to the benefits of extensive reading there. And I would say that there are several, too many, in fact, for our time today. But let me pick up some of the key benefits and 1 or 2 that might surprise you in the audience. So the obvious benefit is reading fluency. So the act of reading and reading a lot improves students' reading fluency. And this is where not using a dictionary is so important. We want the students to read fluency. And we could say here, the more students read, the better readers they become, right? So we know from studies that their reading fluency increases over time. And that itself has a whole host of benefits, right? If you think about examinations, students need to be able to read fluently just to cover the reading sections of the exam. So that's one thing. A second one, and I know everybody's going to love this, is vocabulary acquisition, right? So especially where I live in Japan, a lot of students think, oh, vocabulary, I've got to expand my vocabulary. Vocabulary acquisition, it goes along with extensive reading. And this is because students are meeting these words many, many times. Andy, you said, or Josh, the moderator, and you may find this in Thailand, Andy, says he struggles with learning Japanese. And for any language, when you learn a word once, you haven't mastered the word, right? You need to meet it and see it in context. And extensive reading gives you that exposure to the vocabulary to help you master it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Sorry, for personally, my most successful second language learning experience was actually in a small town in South Korea 20 years ago. Don't ask me to produce any Korean now. That was a long time ago. Yeah. But it was because I was in a small town. There wasn't much exposure to written English or people speaking English, and it was that exposure really that helped me to learn the language. And I think that's where we see real benefits from things like extensive reading.
Absolutely. I mean, another one that I would mention is motivation, and motivation to read in particular. Now, I have heard some teachers in my sessions say, that the country that they live in doesn't really have a reading culture, but extensive reading, where students are choosing what they want to read and making decisions about that, and they realize that they can read, makes reading pleasurable. And what's one of the greatest drivers in learning or in life generally is if you enjoy something. So motivation, we know, appears to rise when we use extensive reading with students too. And I did mention a couple of other surprising things that I wanted to drop in today. But I guess I'll just hop onto those quickly, Andy. One of them is that while extensive reading is focused on reading, it's important to understand that it helps improve a whole range of other skills as well. And this was surprising to me when I first began to research into extensive reading. We know that students' writing skills improve, and that came as a surprise to me. Let's ask the teachers in the chat. When your students read a lot, how or why do you think they would improve their writing skills? Have you seen your students improve their writing skills when you give them a lot of reading? So let me know let us know in the chat what you think about that. But writing and reading are closely linked. They're reciprocal. So students writing about what they read enforces their comprehension, and writing
And I
about
think
what
that
they read.
sorry, Ollie, I think that makes perfect sense, doesn't it, as well? Because the writing that you see on a page is the model for the writing that you then produce.
Exactly. So you might almost call it kind of a virtuous circle, right? Or a virtuous cycle. Writing about what you read improves your writing and your comprehension. And again, your students are using the language that they've seen or read about in their own writing. So their writing skills are improving. And the other one that really kind of interests me is that students also can improve their oral fluency from reading massive amounts as well. And I don't know about you, Andy, but that was a bit of a surprise to me initially. I'd always thought about the skills as kind of separate when I started teaching.
Yeah. Well, no, I agree with you, Ollie, but I suppose, it's being able to see those words and having the time to digest those words that gives people the confidence to then go and produce that language.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there was a couple of interesting comments came up on the screen. Actually, I think there was someone called Leanne who talked about it's her students who read a lot who are the most successful. And I think years ago, when I was on a teacher training program years ago, there was a quote from somebody. Sorry, it's a bit vague, but it was that all successful people read.
Interesting.
To some level. So I think that ties in with some of the experience that we have and our teachers have.
And I can absolutely believe that. And when we talk about, for example, speaking, just to add something to that, extensive reading can really help the students with their oral fluency. I think part of that is, again, exposure in reading to those everyday chunks, which are so important to being able to speak fluently, seeing those chunks work in the reading. But also, extensive reading is a wonderful jump-off point for oral fluency activities and doing activities in the classroom to practice that fluency, right? And so I'm sure teachers will have plenty of good ideas for activities in the chat as well, but we'll cover some in just a minute.
Sure. And I think the classroom is a really positive environment. I mean, I have an experience with my kids where, I tend to give them 30 minutes before bedtime where they have to read. And at the beginning of that 30 minutes, they're kind of going, oh, do I have to read? But at the end of 30 minutes, when it's time to stop reading, they go, no, I don't want to stop reading.
Yeah.
So, if you have got students who express, some resistance to reading, I think the classroom is a nice place to encourage that. Just them to start reading, and then usually that if they're engaged in the text, that will motivate them to carry on.
Yeah, exactly. And we don't have time today to talk about sustained silent reading or SSR, but the classroom is a wonderful place to, even if it's the first 5 or 10 minutes of a lesson, to give students some sustained silent reading time, SSR, with those extensive readers that they've chosen, and that can help to develop the habit of reading, which is so important for successful readers, right? So shall we jump into talking about some activities, Andy?
I think that, exactly. I think that's a really good idea.
And I know, Andy, that one of the things we want to do today is just introduce a few simple activities for teachers. And I thought it'd be really nice to kick off. You shared an example with me of how you had used a flashlight with reading. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I was working with a group of students who, as you mentioned earlier, it's from a country where they said there wasn't a strong reading culture, and so I thought, well, how do we really engage people in reading? And so I took out there was a graded reader of Frankenstein, and so we kind of created an atmosphere in the room where I turned off the lights and I held a torch under my under my face
Yeah.
to create that
Yeah.
spooky atmosphere, and showed the cover and related to that, and then read the synopsis, and it was surprising the how engaged they were and how many more students went off and read the book than I think would have done if I hadn't taken time to create that motivation to
Yeah.
read.
And what a fantastic way to grab their attention as well.
Yeah.
It's not very often a teacher in most subjects will turn the lights off in the classroom, illuminate their face, and do that as well. So you really grab their attention there. So that would be an example of a before reading activity where you've used the blurb on the book for example, or some kind of visual representation to grab the student's attention. And I think it's useful for all of us probably as teachers to think about when we would use these activities. So I've got an activity also for that kind of before reading stage to grab the student's attention, and I'll share it with you. So I don't think it's quite as dramatic as Andy's as your example, Andy.
Can I just state that these were older students? These weren't children.
You don't want to terrify them away from reading. So I mentioned earlier, using graded readers, and one of the things about graded readers, and especially some of the readers that I work with at Oxford University Press, is the beautiful images and the images on the cover. So one of the things that I've done is I will take the images. Can you see that? I'll take the images from the covers of the books, and I'll just photocopy them together in this way, several book covers like this. I'll hide the titles. Okay, so you can see that using my photocopier, I've hidden the titles. Okay, and then I can number these book covers, and I ask the students to choose a book cover that interests them and in pairs or groups to explore these. And that could be just with low levels, that could be just a vocabulary list. With higher levels, it can be, what do you think this is about, or what's going to happen, to really kind of activate their background knowledge and to get them excited about the material that we're going to see on the page. So all you need is a photocopier, and using those images is really important.
That's a really nice activity, Ollie. Yeah, because those images really are engaging, aren't they?
Exactly. So while we're on the topic of before reading, I mentioned earlier, Andy, and I think you were having a little bit of a problem with your Wi-Fi connection then, but I mentioned earlier I would talk about the 5-finger rule for choosing a reader. So let me just cover that now, because this is a before reading activity. So before you use the book, or before the students choose the book, we want them to make the right choice about the level. And so one way to do this is to give them just a page from the reader, or they open a reader and they just choose any page at random and they begin to read. And one of the important ideas in extensive reading, remember, is we don't want them to use a dictionary. We want them to be reading something that's slightly easier for them, right? So the 5-finger rule you can teach to the students. As they go through the reading, they count the number of words they don't know as they meet them on the page. Don't use a dictionary, but as they go through. So they're reading through, okay? If they come to the end, and if there's only no new words for them, or one new word for them, that reader is too easy for them. Too easy, right? If there's 2 to 3 new words that they encounter on the page, then that level of book is probably perfect for them. Right? We want them to be reading about 90 to 98% of the material smoothly. So just 2 or 3 new words on the page, perfect. But if they find that they've got 4 or 5 or more new words on the page that they don't need, the book is probably too difficult. And it's really important with choice. Then we say, no problem, let's choose another book. Let's look at another book and repeat the process until you find something that's easy for them.
So that's interesting, Ollie. So this is not a vocabulary learning exercise. We're not asking them to make notes of the new vocabulary. It's just simply a way of gauging whether that book is the right level for their extensive reading.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So as I mentioned earlier, I think we, as teachers, we think about activities for different stages of the lesson, right? Different stages of the class. So we're assuming here that you want to do some activities. And one thing I would mention is that if you prefer more traditional activities, good graded readers will always have carefully leveled comprehension activities in the back of the book. But just thinking of alternatives to comprehension, I thought a nice idea that I'd share today, which you could do before or after reading, is actually about listening comprehension. And so let me just quickly explain how that would work. And this is a very flexible activity. I mentioned before that the graded readers tend to have really beautiful images in them, and these images are often commissioned specifically, right? They're drawn specifically to support the language on the page. But these images are a wonderful resource. And one of the things that I've done, which teachers really enjoyed when I've shown it to them, is I take it's a bit difficult to see what this is, but I take some of the images from the book. So for example, I've got 5 or 6 different images here from the book. Again, I've just used a photocopier. I cut them out and I give one set to each group of students, right? And they shuffle them up. And then I will read out a summary of the book, and the students have to put the pictures in the right order in their group, right? Super simple, but it involves critical thinking, listening skills. They're engaging with the images, and depending on their level, they can be chatting as well in their own language or the English language too. So I find I love using images. And Andy, maybe you've had a similar experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think it also goes back to something you mentioned earlier, Ollie, about not forcing students to read a book if it's too difficult or if it's not to their taste. And I think using the images in the book in the first instance is a nice way, as you kind of said, to engage them with that. But I think as they're reading along, those images will give context to the words on the page as well, which is really helpful.
Exactly. And the other thing about that activity is it's so flexible. So let me just quickly share a fun variation with you. One of the things you can do is when the students have finished putting their pictures in the right order, or what they think is the right order, I get the students one group to come to the front of the class and to hang their pictures in the correct order on a piece of string. And I call this clothesline comprehension. So it might be a bit difficult to see, but I've got my clothes pegs here. And one group comes to the front, they put the pictures in order and they talk about it. And the other groups will shout out, "Oh no, that's the wrong order," So make it kind of fun and hands-on rather than just a comprehension activity. I think using these images can really add some fun to the classroom as well.
I've never seen that before, Ollie. That's a great idea.
Yeah, and it's nice and simple. It's just a quick variation. Let's make the reading as tactile and kind of fun as we can. The students are learning and they're using their critical thinking skills. And if it's a post-reading activity, they're using the knowledge of the book. If it's a pre-reading activity, we're warming them up to read with a specific reader as well. So now I did just want to touch on one other activity quickly, Andy. Do you think I can do that? Shall I do that very quickly?
Yeah, I think so, Ollie. Yeah.
In the chat. Hopefully I know that we all love activities, right? So let's see if I got one more. Okay, so I do have one more, which is a post-reading activity. There I am, stuck in my pre-while and post mindset. So a post-reading activity is something that we do after the reading. Now, many teachers and schools particularly feel I have to test the student's knowledge. Well, with extensive reading, actually, I don't really agree with that. But if you feel you have to test whether the students have learned something or learned about the book, here's a quick activity for you. And this is called a 6-line summary or a reading triangle. And what I've got here is the name of one of the readers. And the name of the book is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You might know that story, some of you might not. But what I do here is I ask the students to make a summary of the book using their own knowledge without opening the book. So they've read it already. And what they have to do, let me open this up for you, is they have to write a summary of the story on 6 lines. And you can see here that the top of the story, they use 1 word. The second line, they use 2 words. The third line, they use 3 words, etc. And so here you've got a 6-line summary of the story, which the students put in their own words. And this may not feel like assessment, but it's impossible to do if you haven't read the book. I can tell you that right now. And then as you can see here, students can decorate these, put them around the room. And if the students have all read different readers, students go around the room exploring some art on the outside, and they can open the summary and read about what the story was about, the books that their peers have read as well.
Yeah.
So,
again, what I like about that, Ollie, is that there aren't prescribed answers. What you're getting from that is that the student is telling you what they got from the book, how did they benefit from the book that they read.
That's right. That's right.
Nice
and really flexible too, right? Because as we saw from the chat, a lot of teachers in many different teaching situations, for a high level, we might be looking at grammatical accuracy or, something along those lines. For lower levels, it could just be interesting vocabulary to the students or new words that they've learned. Now we've only got I think 3 minutes left, and we still wanted to cover some challenges, Andy. So let's go into that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think this is really important because we've talked about the benefits, we've talked about what you can do in the classroom, but as we know as teachers, no matter how much you plan, there's always going to be some practical challenges in the classroom. So Ollie, I think you've highlighted some of the common challenges here, and we can perhaps explore those and some solutions.
Yep, let's do that. So one of the challenges that I think teachers commonly talk to me about or have talked to me about is the attitudes of the students and sometimes the parents and the school when they want to do extensive reading. People think, oh, well, we're just reading for fun, right? And there are people in the world of education who don't think that fun is a good goal. But I think it's really important to educate, if you're interested in extensive reading, educating students and parents and other teachers sometimes as well, that reading for fun, reading for enjoyment in extensive reading has serious positive implications for students' reading ability and all of those other skills that we talked about earlier. So education is really important.
Yeah, and I think that's true. I've seen the benefits of that. Again, as a parent with my kids, I don't care what they read as long as they read, and they, and they tend to obviously that they'll veer towards books that are in their area of interest. And I think that goes back to the importance of having a range of books for students to choose from. Yeah,
exactly. Now, I can see in the chat there that as we talk about challenges, naturally, many teachers are jumping in, and I can see Teresa has mentioned time. So let me just pick up time. Teresa mentioned short classes of just 50 minutes, and that is one of the big challenges. But what I was going to say to that is extensive reading can be done in stages. If you can encourage your students with a short period of sustained silent reading, even if it's just 5 minutes at the beginning of the class or between classes, once they develop that habit, then we want to move students from reading together inside the class to reading independently outside of the class. So I think that use of time is a good investment overall. But you're quite right, Teresa. It can be a challenge. But once the students get trained in maybe some SSR, and that you're going to do this as a teacher, they can pick up a book from a box of books or the back of the class and get on with it. And then 5 minutes, 10 minutes later, you roll into the lesson.
Sure. And I think also, as we said, as I've noticed before, sometimes it's just a matter of getting them started. And I think in the classroom is a really nice way to do that. And then let the book motivate them to read on.
Exactly. So before we go on, because we're just out of time, one other thing I want to mention is a a big part of extensive reading that we haven't talked about today is starting a reading library. And teachers worry about that, and schools do, of course, because of cost and other things like management. But there are thousands of examples around the world of successful extensive reading libraries. And again, those graded readers provide really good bang for the buck and return on your investment, because they can be used by tens or even hundreds of students over time. And you don't have to start with a giant library. So again, I direct anybody here to the Extensive Reading Foundation to read more about how to set up a library, or again, OUP, and just examples from our fellow colleagues in the educational world. Okay, I'm feeling time pressure. My teacher gene is tingling that we're coming to the end of the session. So let's quickly, shall we jump over to resources, Andy? Go ahead.
Yeah, that's open to resources. And please, I think before we wind up, let the audience please, keep the comments and questions coming. Well, let's have a look at the resources and what you can use in your classrooms.
Right. So what I've got here on the screen, what we've put together here is just a few simple resources for you, and we've used QR codes here, but I believe that these resources will be available in the follow-up to this event. So you would receive access to these in the follow-up email. But what you can see here is on the top left, you've got our global blog. So OUP, we have a very active blog where we post articles by teachers, learners, and we have articles there about extensive reading and language learning by such luminaries and well-known researchers as Dr. Richard Day, for example, among others. At the bottom there, you can see the Extensive Reading Foundation, which is an independent, not-for-profit organization that supports extensive reading. And there they have hundreds of resources, and they have a guide, a free guide, available in 13 different languages. So check that out. And then, of course, if you're interested in more formal resources as well, from OUP, from us, there's resource books, and an example here is Extensive Reading, which is in our Into the Classroom series, which gives you lots of practical ideas and has articles and ideas from 10 or 12 different experts in extensive reading. So there's lots of resources out there, and also articles, journals, research, and so on to support a lot of the things that we've talked about today. And that can provide very useful evidence for you if you're interested in starting an extensive reading program where you are.
And Ollie, sorry, Ollie, I'm just aware of time as well, and we need to talk about the contest.
The contest, right. Let's go on to that. I love talking about extensive reading, so I get stuck. Okay, so let's go on to the reading challenge, which I think is our last point today. The extensive reading challenge, or the reading challenge you can see on your screen, is a contest that it's an opportunity to promote reading that we're doing around the world. And this is called the 10-minute reading challenge. And you can find more information about this on the QR code. And what you'll find there is information and a support pack to help you get started with extensive reading. And that has things like a poster to track your reading progress in the class, a calendar of tips and activities for you to download, and certificates for you to run your own awards ceremony at the end of the 10-minute reading challenge for your students. So definitely check that out. And there's a trial option for access to some of our digital readers as well. I hope that's a good summary.
I really like the goal of this. If you can see there in that red box, help your teachers help your students develop a reading habit. So this is not just learning in the classroom. This is something that's going to benefit your students for the rest. And that could be reading in English, in their native language, in whichever language they're learning. So absolutely. I think it's quite an exciting.
That's what we want, isn't it? That reading habit. That reading habit. Yeah. Well, I think we've kind of come to the end of what we wanted to say. I don't know if we can pick up a question. I'm going to ask Josh for his advice on that.
We've got 1 minute, so I'll pop. Oh,
okay.
Maybe time for just one question. So let me pop one on screen. It's something that you can probably cover quite quickly.
Oh, okay. Can I review the 5-finger approach again? Okay, so this is called the 5-finger rule in less than 1 minute. So the 5-finger rule helps the students decide if the reader they've picked up is too easy, too difficult, or the right level. And the guide is simple. They just read through a random page of that reader, okay, and they count up the number of new words that they meet, words that they don't know. They don't look them up in a dictionary. So, for example, they're reading, oh, I don't know this word. There's one word I don't know. Oh, I don't know that word either. There's another word I don't know, and so on. And the rule is, if there are only 0 or 1 new words, the reader's too easy. If there are about 2 or 3 new words that the students don't know, that's the perfect level of reader for them. Okay, still easy enough to read about 95% of the material. But if there are 4 or 5 or more words they don't know, then that reader is too difficult. And a really important role of the teacher is to say, let's choose another reader. Let's choose something else till we find your right level. Okay, I hope that helps you with the 5-finger rule. Teacher Lisa is putting a quick summary in the chat. It looks like, thanks so much, Teacher Lisa. And I guess that's all we have time for today.
Thanks very much, Ollie, and thanks to all the participants who joined us today. I hope that was useful. I hope there's something that you can take away now and apply in your classrooms next week, or when you have time.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for everybody for joining us today. Hope this has been useful, and please enjoy the rest of ELTOC. It's been great spending time with you. Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much, Ollie and Andy. Wonderful session and lots of great ideas and advice for all the teachers. So
bye, everybody.
Thanks again, Andy and Ollie. And I hope to see you guys at another event.
Take care.
Bye now.
Bye.
Let me just arrange the screen here. All right. So I hope everyone enjoyed that session. We're going to launch straight into our next session. But before that, let me just make a few quick announcements. So if you did like that session, click the like button. Or if you loved it, click the love button. Let us know how you thought about it. Also, if you scan the QR code up there or click on the link in the chat, you can find all those resources they talked about, as well as a link to join our waiting list so you can find out about all the wonderful events that we've got coming up. And finally, do share this event with teachers. We still have 2 more sessions, so there's time for them to join it live. And they can also join or watch the video after. So do share that with teachers and help spread the event to more and more people. So thanks again to Ollie and Andy. And our next session will start in just a couple minutes. But before that, let me remind you, certificates, if you're interested in certificates, do click the link in the comments or scan that QR code. You can find the information on that page. And again, share this event with any of your colleagues, whether that be by email, LinkedIn, Facebook, whatever you're on. Do share it and spread the good news. All right, so our next session is on climate change in the ELT classroom, and we're very happy to have 2 wonderful presenters, Zarina Suwan and Colum Downs. So let me give them a quick introduction, and then I'll bring them on screen. So Zarina originally is qualified as a scientist, but she's been working in the English language teaching field for over 30 years now. She's taught all levels in both private and government institutions and has worked worldwide as a teacher and teacher educator. So she's got loads of experience to bring to the conversation today. Colum as well, lots of experience. He's been involved in education, specifically language education and higher education and professional skills training for over 20 years across Europe, the Middle East, and East Asia. Most recently, he's worked as the Director of English Education and Society for the British Council in Indonesia, and was the British Council Global Technical Lead for Climate Action in Language Education. So 2 wonderful presenters. I'll go ahead and welcome them on screen now. So join me in welcoming Zarina and Colum to the ELTOC. Hello, both. How are you doing?
Hi, Josh.
Hello.
Hi, Josh. Hi, Colum.
All right. So welcome to ELTOC, and I'll go ahead and hand the audience over to you.
Thanks
very
much,
Josh. Just before we get going, I just want to say I really liked that last session on extensive reading. It was really, really good. And I know that I'm currently joining everybody today from Bali, and I'm at a conference. And next year, there's going to be a World Congress on extensive reading here in Bali. So come over. So I'm Colum. I'm in Indonesia, and I'm delighted to be here with Zarina. Zarina's not in Indonesia. Where are you, Zarina?
No, I'm in Costa Rica, so it's my evening time. I believe it's morning for you. Hopefully, we've got some people here from my part of the world as well as yours.
Yeah, I think we've got the whole world covered for this session on climate change and integrating environmental issues into ELT. In this session, we're going to have a conversation with each other, but also with you, the audience that are joining us. So we'd like to see your comments in the chat as we have our discussion, and any questions that come up that we'll hopefully have time to respond to as well. I think there's kind of three parts to our chat today. We're going to be talking about why it's so important to integrate environmental issues and the climate crisis into English language teaching. How you can do that, some practical tips and ideas, and then, you know, with any kind of lesson plan or curriculum or that you're working with your students, we're going to focus a little bit on learning outcomes. What are the outcomes that we hope to see in our students as a result of all this? Zarina, we're going to kick off with why it's so important.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll just start off and say a little bit about climate change education in general, and then we're going to come and bring that conversation through to English language teaching. In the last sort of 18 months with the British Council, I was very lucky to be working on this area of climate action in language education. I spent a lot of time looking outside of ELT at education in general. And I just want to share a couple of kind of key findings. One is to say that there's nearly now universal agreement from education experts and policymakers that it is very, very important that there is climate change education, but not just in science, but across all subjects in the curriculum. World leaders and ministries of education have agreed that this is an important thing to happen, but the implementation of that is quite slow and hasn't quite happened yet. Why it's important, I'm going to give you three reasons why climate change education in general is so important. One is that there is a lot of evidence to say that more knowledge and awareness around climate change and what is happening can lead to behavioral change. So as individuals, we all contribute a little bit towards the warming of the planet, and the more that we're aware of our individual decisions that we take, the more we can make a difference in reducing carbon emissions and keeping temperatures to below what is called 1.5 degrees an increase, or 2 degrees as an increase in the next sort of couple of decades. So we can help make a difference individually, and we can also then, if we're better informed, take action collectively as groups, or work on projects in our communities and societies. And the kind of second other sort of big area and reason that climate change education is so important is that whilst we still need to act to try to reduce the warming of the planet, we know that the planet is already warming. And I think in many countries around the world, you've begun to see the effects of climate change. There's been more disasters and floods and fires, and our world is changing. And nearly all of the experts agree that although we're going to try to limit and reduce the negative impact of climate change, we are going to live in a different world. Our world is going to be affected. So the other side of it is about helping students prepare for a future that's impacted by climate change. So these are quite broad areas, maybe Zarina, do you want to share some of your reasons and thoughts about why you think climate change is so important to integrate into teaching?
Yes, sure. Everything that you said, I think, is really, really important. And I think Fernando Akize said as well that it's an issue that affects us all, wherever we are. And it's nice to see people from Mexico, from Ecuador, from Philippines, all here. So it's clearly something that interests people all over. And I've found that it interests students too, actually. It can be a really motivating factor, as well as it being a really important topic that students need to learn about and become more aware of. It can motivate students and really get students thinking about their environment, the world around them, while they're using English. And I've found, because I've worked in a few different places now, I've been in Costa Rica for 5 years, but I've worked and lived in a few places. And whether it was Nepal, where I lived 20 years ago, we did seedling planting, where students learnt about reforestation because the area was very badly deforested. And students who brought a little bit of soil to help care for the nursery that we started at the school then all took a seedling home with them a month later. And they planted that in their gardens, and those were all seedlings for future trees. But as well as that, it can be for students who maybe are not that into the climate, but they're into maybe pop music. There's a really successful Korean pop group called Blackpink, who have made a lot of financial donations to help fight climate change. There's Billie Eilish, who recently announced that her world tour was going to be environmentally friendly, that nothing was going to be sold in plastic in her concerts. And if the audience wanted water, they could bring empty bottles with them and fill them up at her concert. And then, of course, there are teenagers like, well, actually, she's not a teenager anymore, Greta Thunberg, who have motivated a lot of interest in young people all over the world. I was reading about Lesane Mutunke from Kenya, who basically for 4 years, he's really into football and he is really passionate about climate. And he decided every time he scored a goal when he played football, he would plant 11 trees to represent the 11 members of his team. And he's been doing that for 4 years. So it's something that I think brings young people to life. And it is something that they are interested in, that they look up to influential people and famous people who are talking about it as well. So it can be useful for teachers, actually, to use it as a motivating topic, rather than just, if you like, just teaching about climate. What about you in Indonesia? Do you find students or teachers are interested in climate change education, Colin?
I mean, Indonesia, climate change education is important, I think, in every country around the world. Indonesia is a country that's really at the heart of climate change in many ways, because it is both a country that, together with Brazil and the Congo, over half of the world's rainforests are in Indonesia, Brazil, and the Congo. So one of the important things that's happening at the moment is how to protect these forests and to stop deforestation. So Indonesia has an important role to play in helping to prevent the climate change situation getting worse. But at the same time, it's a country that's like many countries in Southeast Asia and in Africa. These are countries that are already feeling the impact of climate change. As sea levels rise, there are islands in Indonesia, whole communities will have to move in the future. At the moment, I would say, sadly, there's not enough climate change education in countries like Indonesia. Not enough students are well informed. They don't really understand the science behind it, and very often they don't have opportunities to talk about climate change in any of their subjects. And this is not unusual. Like I said at the beginning, although governments around the world have agreed that climate change education across all subjects is very, very important, it still really isn't happening. There's beginning to be a change, as I said, towards more implementation, but it's very slow. So students, I know when I talk to them, some students are very worried, those that are quite a little bit informed, and they need to reliable information. And we know that schools are, the best source of reliable information. There's a lot of misinformation online. So those students want to talk about it, but there are lots of students who are not engaged. But we need, I think, to engage them. But I think a little bit later on, we'll talk about how to do that in a way that is going to inspire and motivate them and not scare them or cause what we call eco-anxiety, something that a lot of teenagers suffer from, to be worse. But Zarina, we're talking a little bit about the students. I'm wondering also about teachers, because I think most of the people on our webinar today with Oxford are teachers out there. In your experience, do you think, what skills do teachers need, and what skills do teachers have already to do this?
Yeah, that's a good point, because I can imagine teachers may be put off in terms of actually teaching or involving climate change education in the classroom, because it might seem a bit technical. It's something that's not quite their field, and it's perfectly natural if you're an English language teacher to think, well, that's what I do. I teach language. I don't really know about climate change. But I would suggest that it doesn't have to be technical, actually. Fernando gave a very nice example earlier. He was saying that maybe you could teach about things that students are interested in. It could be, he suggested pets. So you might be looking at pets that some of your students have, and then relate it to endangered animals. And I think that's a perfect example. And so teachers don't have to be talking about the technical ins and outs and scientific nature of climate change. However, I do think there are certain skills that teachers do need to have to be able to tackle topics such as climate change education. And that's kind of having an attitude that I'm not here just to teach English, for example, because I think we need to feel that education isn't just about passing the English exam at the end of the year. Obviously, that is an important element of what we do in the classroom, but it's just one element. So I think we need to be aware of making changes to the way our students may think, or facilitating the way they think, and becoming an educator in terms of lifelong skills, of which English is one of those skills. Yeah. And to be able to do that as a teacher, we need to actually think, okay, I'm also a lifelong learner, and I need to develop my own skills. So continuing professional development is really important. And those of you who are joining us today are doing just that. You're practicing continuing professional development. So well done just for being here. I think that's a really important first step. And that gives you confidence to then experiment and to be willing to experiment. And then there's developing your knowledge base, as you said, about climate change, about maybe the UN Sustainable Development Goals, about how to put new ideas into practice in the classroom. And then the skill of integrating linguistic vocabulary and skills with global skills, to be able to meet the diverse interests that our students have. So we're not just teaching to our students who are good at English or who are very academic. And so you're able to attract the attention and get students interested in English through different topics as well. And that's just not me saying it. OUP actually have a really interesting expert paper on global skills, which can be really useful. And there's a section in there in terms of skills that teachers can develop as well. And it covers things like language, communication skills, collaboration skills, as well as being a cultural citizen, having those citizenship skills, and digital literacies, as well as well-being. And so all of that comes into play, I think, when we decide we are educators rather than only language teachers. And I think that's important. I guess attitude and awareness of how we can be in the classroom. I think that helps. What about you? Would you say there are important skills that teachers have to develop?
Yeah, well, I think I totally agree with you, in that I think any teacher today could start integrating environmental issues into the classroom, and that you don't need to be a climate scientist or an expert. I do think that it will help you more confident if you are better informed. So if you develop your own, what we call climate and environmental literacy, if you do read a few more articles, if you do kind of own knowledge of this area, but it's not essential. I think that you can be a sort of facilitator in the classroom with your quite well informed, and maybe they want to share their knowledge or their feelings or their emotions about climate change and how it's impacting them or their family and community. I often like to actually see the role of English language teachers as facilitators of learning, and that can be learning language or it can be learning around content. I think that, as you said earlier, that students are often more motivated in the classroom when the lesson is about something and about something meaningful to them. And I think that environmental issues, especially if they're being impacted or can do something positive, is very meaningful and will be very, very engaging. So there are, I mean, we're moving a little bit now, change our heading at the bottom of the page to sort of how, in sort of some of the things that they can do. So I've already mentioned you can develop your own climate and environmental literacy a little bit, learn a little bit more about this subject area so that you feel more confident talking about it. But there's many other kind of small practical things that you can do. So I'll give you one more practical thing, and then I'm going to hand over to Zarina to tell us some more practical things that you can do straight away. Okay. So number one is to be aware that students, I think sometimes the way climate change education has been presented in course books past is they might have been looking at polar bears in the Arctic, or very sort of abstract, far away, global impacts of climate. I think what is going to be more engaging for your students are climate change issues that are relevant to them in their country, in their town, in their city, in their community. So one of your responsibilities is to think about what are the climate change issues that your students care about, and what are the environmental issues that concern them. what are the things that are happening in your context. So a bit of personalization and localization of news is one of my recommendations. Zarina, do you want to add some more tips on what teachers can do to make this more interesting and more engaging for learners?
Yes, sometimes one of the things I think that turns learners off is when it's all about terminology. And maybe it's very focused on vocabulary and lists of vocabulary that are related to climate change education. And that can be a little bit dry and not very engaging. So I would say practical ideas that include vocabulary, but that's not the only focus. So vocabulary comes out of an activity. A typical one that comes to mind is that of the water cycle, for example. You might talk about how the water evaporates from the sea, and you get cloud formation, and then that water condenses, and when the cloud hits land, you have precipitation and the rain falls. And that the emphasis might be on terminology and vocabulary like evaporation, condensation, and precipitation. But before we even get to that, the water cycle, you could actually ask questions that students relate to, things like, what do you notice before it rains? What have you noticed that always happens before it rains? And you can bring out these ideas and concepts. How do you know it's going to rain? And then someone might mention clouds. Where do clouds come from? What are clouds? And so these are really sort of engaging ideas that may just make the students stop and think, because, well, you see clouds, you know that they're clouds, but maybe you've never actually thought about how and where they come from. And so we can approach the water cycle from that kind of angle. And that can talk about then climate and how maybe there's less rainfall or there's more rainfall. So you've got comparatives of language being used, more or less. And then you can bring in things like feelings. How do grey clouds make you feel? How do fluffy clouds make you feel? What is it like when it's sunny? What colours do you see? How do green trees and bushes and grass make you feel? Because I'm loving your background at the moment, Colin. It's beautiful, rich green. And actually where I am in Costa Rica, it's beautifully green because it rains an awful lot here. So those are the things that you could bring out. So you've got language of colours, you've got emotions, then you can bring in well-being as well, and get students to reflect on, especially through the pandemic, how they were feeling when they didn't go out or they weren't allowed to go out, and how did they feel when they did go out, and that importance of nature on mental health, on just being healthy, on how you breathe when you're outdoors, and that effect of being outdoors can be very uplifting. There was a recent article in The Guardian, actually, how the sound of bird song is actually really uplifting. It's not just sort of, we say it's uplifting, we use the word, but it's physiologically uplifting on the brain. And doctors are considering using it as a prescription for people who are depressed, to actually spend more time outdoors where you can see greenery and you can hear birdsong, and doing it on a regular basis. So we can relate these things that students feel and are aware of, but maybe don't have the language to actually describe, and help them with the language that they need. and then relate it back to their environment and open spaces. And that could lead to something like doing a survey. So you then have the skill of writing questions for a survey. How do you design a survey? Do you have multiple choice answers? Do you have open questions? So they can be learning about creating a survey, but then they can go out and actually ask people, how do you feel when it's raining or it's cloudy or etc. And they could come up with their own questions, which personalizes it. It's a motivating factor. They could video doing it and then actually show that back in the classroom. That could be an online classroom. It could be face-to-face. So I think that there are ways of talking about climate change education, but you can come in at an angle that's familiar to the student. And so you avoid that whole technicality and complicated feeling or fear that you might have as an English language teacher, for example.
No, I totally agree with that. You're making me think of some other kind of tips that I want to share. I mean, there's so many sort of recommendations that we've got. One of the things I think I wanted clearly to teachers from everything that I've read and recommendations that I've had about this area is that, and this is one of the challenges, is that we must be honest with students. So it is important that students understand that this is a crisis. That is, although it doesn't feel urgent because climate change, it's taking years. It's not something that happens overnight, but it is a crisis. To really understand, climate change, what is happening and what impact it's going to have on the planet. Now, whilst that's important, and it's also important that students are aware of the main causes of climate change. And the main causes of climate change are often the fossil fuel industries and coal factories. We can make a difference as individuals, but we also make sure that everybody is very, very well informed. So those are sort of quite heavy, but I think they're important. We do not shy away from being honest and truthful with our students. But at the same time, as kind of Zarina was talking, we can counterbalance that. And it's important that we counterbalance that with lots of positive content that we can introduce to our students about innovations that are happening around the world. We can talk about climate change heroes in different countries, ideally in your country. Find somebody in your country or your community that is doing something amazing to tackle climate change. So we can also focus on action that is being taken, provide inspiring role models. And as Rena said, if you can get your students to do a sort of climate change action project, maybe make a film, conduct a survey in their community, then that's going to be fantastic. Be very inspiring as well. So
Colin, you seem to have frozen a little bit there. I guess that might be your connection.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
You're back.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I think that was there's just one more while I've still got a connection before I drop off, and then I'll jump. A very simple, practical thing. Okay. So there was a company around the world called Climate, and they made a campaign to say that the visuals that were being used in the media were not having much of an impact. People to them. So again, it goes.
Colin, could you tell us the name again, because you were breaking up a little bit.
So there was a company called Climate Visuals, and Climate Visuals had a campaign, and that the pictures you use in the newspapers are pictures of polar bears or fires, and those pictures, they don't really care, sadly. More human pictures of people being either impacted by climate change or doing great positive things, but I think that that's an important message that we can take on board as educators with our students. So maybe you could think about, what pictures would you use in your context, in your country, with your student?
Nice ideas, yeah. So just to summarize, because you were breaking up a little bit, I think what you were saying was finding images that people can relate to rather than things that they are distant from works better, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that they're really nice ideas, yes. And yeah, getting students to choose their own images or improve a campaign, show them a campaign and say, how could you do that better? That would be great, yeah. Really hands-on stuff there. But why though? What would be the learning outcome of that, Colin?
Okay, I mean, we're coming on to our third part of our discussion, and again, it's like, this is like a simple question. People say, well, so what? You know, why? Okay, first of all, back almost, this is full circle in our webinar today. It's almost going back to like, why? Remember that English language is the global language now, and it's the language of science. It's the language of often, if you want to participate in climate change, if you want to read about it, the vocabulary and your language skills are kind of the key to being part of the debate. So one of the outcomes is that we do want to increase students' climate and environmental literacy in English language, so that they can be better informed and better participate. Maybe they've got an idea to tackle climate change, and we want them to be able to share that, or talk to other people around the world about climate change issues. So language, improved language, and a little bit of specific language, I think, is one of the outcomes. I'll just add one more, and then Zarina, you can add a few more, I think, as well. We said earlier that as teachers, we don't just teach language, we can teach skills and we can teach content. I'm a big advocate of what is called content and language integrated learning. And I like the idea that by the end of the lesson, my students have developed their language skills, but they've also learned something. They've learned, as language teachers, we often have more freedom over the actual content of the lesson than many other subject tutors. So, one of the learning outcomes might be a language-related output, but it might also be that their knowledge about the content or the subject has also increased. So there's two things there. Zarina, do you want to add a few more? And then I've got a few more as well. And then we'll come to...
Yes, I'm absolutely 100% behind you on the CLIL front, content and language integrated learning. Yeah, I'm a big fan. That came from my science days and actually trying to make English language a bit more relevant to scientists and engineers. And I think in a way that's what we need to do with all of our students, because that they're not necessarily into English. But one of our participants, I think she was called Laura. I noticed the name Laura Schultz, if I got that name right, mentioned that Livia Schutz said it's a lingua franca. English is a lingua franca, right? And that's really important. We're no longer teaching English as a foreign language. We're teaching English to use English for different purposes. So our language learning outcomes shouldn't only be focused on language. We can have learning outcomes in terms of environmental knowledge and awareness and responsibility. Our students can learn about how it feels to make positive change. It's important to make positive change. It's morally right to make positive change, but actually it feels good as well to make positive change. So that again impacts on mental health, on well-being. And that can reduce eco-anxiety, which another one of our participants mentioned earlier in the chat box. It's easy to kind of spiral out of control if you feel like you can't do anything and the world, the planet is suffering. You can get over anxious about these things. But actually, if we can get students to come up with their own solutions, to do their own research, and Andy and Ollie were talking about reading skills earlier. They can go on the internet and read about what interests them in terms of the climate. And in the chat box, we've got a link to Eco in the Classroom for some more ideas. There are lesson plans for primary, secondary, and adult in terms of energy, environment, and responsibility. And responsibility is a big thing that we can bring into our classroom in terms of becoming aware of misinformation that you mentioned, Colin. There's a lot of information out there that maybe isn't reliable. So we can actually teach how to evaluate and critically evaluate information online. And we can get students to find information and then bring it into the classroom and together decide, is this reliable? Is this source a reliable source or not? So you've got critical thinking skills that are being taught as well. Students spend a lot of time online anyway, and so they can develop that awareness for their own personal needs to decide what to accept and what to actually dismiss as unreliable. So they're learning digital literacy skills at the same time. That's another outcome that can be included. And through doing all of this, we're empowering our students to make small changes, small positive changes in their local communities, in their classroom communities, and maybe to connect in global events as well. On the 7th of December, the UN Biodiversity Conference started. So things like this, when global events happen, we can draw their attention to that so they become more aware of what's going on in the world. And we can bring in that sense of responsibility of why should we have a certain lifestyle when it may affect someone else in the world negatively. I just want to actually include a factual piece that I came across the other day. 1 billion children, that's nearly half of the world's population of children, live in extremely high-risk countries in terms of impact of climate change. So these are things that are going to affect most of our students in one way or another around the world. And I think I'm going to quote Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who said, "Action springs not from thought, but readiness for responsibility." So we don't need to be telling our students what to think, but we can help them learn and develop their own thinking skills so that they go out and find reliable information and make responsible decisions in the future. Because as you mentioned, Colin, we can't rely on the petrochemical industry forever. We can't go on living like this and just disregard the 1.5 increase in world temperature. So we need to do something about it. So our students have to be able to find solutions, have to think outside the box. And they need to do things differently. They can't carry on as business as usual. So we need to be able to give them those world skills, those those lifelong learning skills and global skills for them to be able to go out and actually do something about it.
No, talking about skills, one of the reading a lot about is around, and this change education specialists, and they talk about the need for all education systems to help young people develop what are called green skills. Jobs are changing, careers are changing, the planet is changing. So I know for a long time, many in like ELT world, we've talked about integrating 21st century skills, which are really important. Like, so we're trying to teach language, but also help our students become better creators and communicators. I would recommend that you all start thinking about green skills and what are the green skills that students will need in order to thrive in a world that's impacted by climate change. The green jobs. And talking about green, like sometimes students might say, oh, environment, I've done this is boring. Let's be honest. They say the environment lesson. Yeah, we know what climate change education is. Now, the first thing to say is that, by the way, so if it's not happening, education about climate change is essential as a starting point. But if you're in a school that's already, quite advanced and your students are quite advanced and they've had the lesson about climate change, how do you make it more interesting? You need to start thinking about, okay, let's have a lesson about climate justice. What's climate justice? Or rewilding, or green jobs, or adaptation. As I said earlier, if you do a little bit of reading, a little bit of your own professional development, find out a little bit more about these things, especially as they relate to your country, and then introduce this authentic content, adapt the course books, personalize the course books, and again, make it, what are the green issues that you're passionate about? What are the green topics that you're interested in? And let's talk about this. And then you, as the language teacher, can facilitate that lesson and make sure that their language is, practice fluency and accuracy. And I think they'll find that quite motivating. I'm aware we could talk about this, Zarina, all evening for you and all morning for me in Bali, but we're running out of time. We've only got a few minutes left.
We are.
Any final thoughts from you?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking how maybe we could bring numbers into it and just have, a range of random numbers and get students to think, what might those numbers have to do with the climate? And get them thinking in terms of riddles, trying to solve it, and from there lead on to things. I came across something about man-made objects. Man-made objects, and this was published in 2020, so this is already 2 years old, outweigh the overall biomass in the world. So there are more man-made objects in our world today than there are living creatures. That's quite horrifying, right? And yet we measure success and development in terms of products, gross domestic product, right? So things like this is what we can get students thinking about. There was a comment from Rabe Hediawi, who said, what's the use of making students and everyone global-wide well aware of climate change when there are no strict measures against those endangering the planet? Well, through pressure, there are more and more governments now actually doing something. You've got changes in terms of single-use plastics. You've got a movement, and it's our students who are going to be responsible for those kind of measures. And when governments realize that that's what their citizens want, then that's what they're going to give, because otherwise they won't get the vote. So making our students more aware and responsible is going to have that knock-on effect, I think, and change is coming. and change will come, and we can help our students to be part of that change.
Yeah, I know. I think that's a great final kind of call to action for teachers. The last thing I'd like to share with our teachers today is that one of the initiatives that I worked on last year with the British Council, it was actually with the British Council and the Oxford English Dictionary. We developed a podcast called The Climate Connection, and there's 10 episodes of that podcast. They're all, I think, fantastic. It's all about climate change education and English language teaching, and it's got lots of voices from around the world, from teachers, from experts. And in each episode, you hear from the Oxford English Dictionary, and they talk about climate-related vocabulary. Develop your own environmental vocabulary or lexis. So if you're into podcasts, that's a new one maybe for you. And I hope we'll put the link in the chat, or you can find it on the British Council's Teaching English website as well under podcasts. So I've really enjoyed talking to you, to Zarina. Oxford.
And I to you, Colin.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much for the opportunity. And Joshua's back, so I think our time is up, Colin.
Your time's up. Thank you so much, both of you. Amazing session, lots of food for thought. And I think, it's a great topic to tackle. And it was lovely to have such experts to share this conversation with all the teachers in the room. So thank you very much again.
Thank you. And thanks to everyone for joining us.
Okay, we're about to take a little break, so I will just say goodbye to Colm and Zarina. So thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to take a quick 10-minute break. We'll have a video playing in the background with lots of useful information and tips and links for you to learn more about ways you can connect with us, and also some of the information from today's session. So again, if you like the session, do click the like or the love buttons. And if you want your certificate, make sure you click or scan the QR code, or click the links as they appear in the chat. So we'll take a quick break, and we'll be back at in about 10 minutes time for the third session. So enjoy your break and grab a cup of coffee or tea, and I'll see you back in a bit.
Morning, how are you?
Language is more than words on a page. It's how we express ourselves, how we share ideas. Learning a new language takes commitment, takes belief in yourself.
When he arrived home, he was shocked to discover how much...
Shocked to discover
how much old Hildegard.
I care about the future of climate change. I read lots of articles about the environment in English. It helps me keep up with the debate.
Learning English opens the door to new opportunities.
Speaking English means I can reach customers all over the world.
New perspectives. New people.
Oh, sorry, let me help you.
It's okay.
It wasn't my intention.
Don't worry.
Every tiny step forward is part of something bigger, something better.
My brother makes fun of me, but I believe learning English will help me change the world.
The moment when you get it right. Moments when it takes all you've got. Moments when you connect. When you dream. When you grow. When you find the words.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, were you waiting for a long time?
No.
Okay, so shall we go inside?
Yeah.
How are you?
Fine, and you?
I'm nervous, but it's like,
You know.
At Oxford University Press, we know that your work as an English language teacher evolves constantly. Teaching techniques and methods change. Your learners have different needs. But what about you?
This is a path full of so many things.
As our learners and our students evolve, flexibility is needed.
When it comes to challenges, we always have lots.
We need to be learning constantly. Everything's so changeable.
So to support and empower your teaching, we offer a variety of professional development opportunities designed for you and informed by your collective teaching experiences.
At Oxford University Press, we want to help teachers move forward and develop, and we want to support them as they go through this journey, taking into account what's happening on the ground, what's happening in classrooms.
Oxford University Press is always by their side, ready to listen and provide help and assistance wherever they can.
Underpinned by research on the most topical and important issues in English language teaching, lots of our materials cover a range of topics and methodologies and are available 24/7.
You'd find that there are all kinds of materials available to you. Become better informed about the context of teaching with techniques and solutions to take back to the classroom.
You can find position papers and focus papers on key areas with lots of ideas.
Global online events to connect, learn and grow.
We have global online events. These are really fantastic opportunities to bring together our teaching and learning communities.
It's great to see the interaction between other teachers and educators across the world.
We're here to support you, so you can be the best teacher that you can be.
Teachers embracing professional development will benefit.
As teachers, we should adapt ourselves into new conditions.
It will benefit your life and your students' life as well.
Life Vision. Where next? Why do your students want to be confident English speakers? To study more? To travel? For their career? Whatever their reason, Life Vision invites them to create their own unique vision of where language learning can take them. Life Vision transports your class to real-world environments through 360-degree interactive images, vlogs and documentary videos, with robust exam preparation and a comprehensive skills-based methodology. Life Vision helps your students harness the global opportunities that Confidence in English offers, whatever direction they choose. Life Vision. Where next? Visit www.oup.com/ELT.
Insight Second Edition. Challenging Ambitious Minds. The new edition of this trusted course will stretch your most curious students in their English language learning. Insight Second Edition is packed with rich and thought-provoking texts and videos about global issues to keep bright minds absorbed at every step of the way. Develop global skills like critical thinking, communication, and creativity through a strong syllabus that inspires students to deepen their awareness of real-world English and boosts their confidence in their language skills. Empower your students with strategies for lifelong learning, with assessment for learning support woven through the course. Insight Second Edition. Empower, develop, inspire. For the next generation of global thinkers. Together we get results with Beehive. Bees are vital for the future of our planet. So are young learners, who have the skills to collaborate and achieve results. Beehive is a new primary course that helps students gain the life skills and the exam results they need to thrive. By combining a comprehensive grammar and vocabulary syllabus. With an exciting collaborative learning approach, Beehive encourages children to work together to achieve a shared goal and develop collaborative skills that benefit them in the future. With every unit offering exciting team projects, think, feel, grow activities, and stories and videos from all over the world. Beehive empowers children to learn about the world around them, grow their global skills, and fly through their exams and beyond. Learn, grow, fly. Together, we get results with Beehive.
Help your English language learners to develop a reading habit. Take part in our 10-minute reading challenge with tips and resources to support reading, plus free access to Oxford Reading Club, our digital library with hundreds of graded readers. Learners can choose what they'd like to read at the right language level and read as much as they want, anytime, anywhere. Sign up for the 10-minute reading challenge today.
All right, welcome back. I hope everyone had a nice break. Got yourself a bit of coffee, tea, or whatever you're drinking at the moment. I'm drinking green tea. But yeah, whatever you're drinking, I'm glad you're back. We've got one more session, which will start in a couple minutes' time. But before that, just again, if you want your certificates, do scan the QR code on the top of the screen or click the links that have been posted into the comments. So you can do that at any time. So I'll go ahead and get our last session for ELTOC started. So this session will be delivered by Chris Sheen, and he's going to show us, he's going to explain how teachers can capitalize on some non-traditional ways to interact with their students. So let me give him a little bit of an introduction. So Chris is an educator who has over 26 years experience teaching all types of learners in North and South America, Asia, Europe, and also Africa. So pretty much everywhere. He's a former teacher trainer and professional development coordinator for Oxford University Press, and he continues to work with us as a tutor for the Oxford Teachers Academy. He's also a bit of a poet because he sent through a haiku, which is a Japanese poem, for me to read to introduce him. So I'm going ahead and read his haiku now, and then we'll get him on screen. Finding the right words. It's what we'll do together on December 10th. So I'm going to welcome Chris on screen, and hopefully he can help you find the right words. Hello, Chris. How are you doing?
I'm great, Joshua. Thank you for the introduction.
All right.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. So I'll go ahead and hand the audience over to you.
Great. Thank you. Well, hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this last session of the day. I don't know how many of you joined the first session. I was a ghost in the first session. I was watching with my mic and everything turned off. But what I noticed was, according to the notes I took, there were at least 16 countries represented there. I saw people that said they're from Tajikistan, from Sudan, from Brazil and Georgia, and basically all corners of the earth. But if you weren't in the first session, I'm curious to know where you're from. So if you could just put in the chat box where you're from. I'm joining you from Japan. The reason I wrote a haiku was because that's where I'm based, here in Osaka. Okay, let me take a look here. We've got Mexico. I saw somebody say Romania, Libya. Fantastic. Hello from Hong Kong. Myanmar. Wow, we are getting some very diverse corners of the world here already. Kyrgyzstan. What else we got here? The moon. Fernando, welcome. I hope the signal is good up there. Germany. Southern Italy. Pakistan. Shizuoka. Someone here in Japan with us. Oman. A lot of them not on this list. Well done. Egypt, UAE. Hope you're enjoying the World Cup over there. Vietnam. I was just in Vietnam last month with Oxford. Taiwan, Colombia, Iran. Welcome, Iran. Welcome, Egypt. Iran, you guys played very well in the World Cup, by the way. Kudos to you guys. Costa Rica, Portugal. You guys are still in the World Cup. Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, I'll be paying attention to the comments, and I'll be going through the presentation. I will have some time at the end for a little bit of Q&A. Hopefully, I'll leave aside about 5 minutes. But if there are any questions we don't get to, please let my team know. Let the Oxford team know, and they can always get a hold of me, and I can try to answer some questions that way too, if necessary. Okay? All right, so the title of this one, you can see the top title, F plus T equals CF. And you might have thought, did I sign up for an English session here at Oxford, or are we doing some kind of algebra? Well, actually, the F stands for the fingers and the T for thumbs. And I just put this equation. It's shorter, but also it seems a little bit more fun. So fingers and thumbs equals communication fun. And that's what we'll be looking at today. So I have a colleague, Heywan. I believe she's my moderator for clicking the slide. So Heywan, if you could please next. Great. Okay, everybody, you can see here it says, do not search online, please. I have a couple of questions for you, 3 actually, and I'd like you to do your best to answer them. You do not need to search these online. Ironically, in the previous session about the environment, polar bears were mentioned, and we did not coordinate our sessions. So, but my questions are on penguins. So if you're sensing a northern or southern, a cold animal feeling, this was not coordinated. So I have some questions in the chat box. I'd like you to answer simply with your finger or your thumb by putting a T for true or an F for false. Okay. My first question, everybody, T for true, F for false. Question number 1. All penguins live in the southern hemisphere. All penguins live in the southern hemisphere. T for true, F for false. Sierra Leone is in the house. Russia's in the house. Okay, we've got some F's, some false. Mariposa says true. Fernando from the moon says true. I don't think there are any penguins up there on the moon, Fernando. It seems like F is carrying the day at the moment. Seems like it. Okay, the answer actually is true. Now, I did not know this answer. I had to research this answer. But according to my source, all penguins live in the southern hemisphere. There might be some occasionally that venture a little bit north of the Galapagos Islands in Ecuador. They slightly swim into the northern hemisphere, but they're living in the southern hemisphere. So the answer is true. Question number 2, everybody. Still about penguins. The emperor, the granddaddy of them all, the emperor penguin is the largest and the heaviest. T for true, F for false. The emperor penguin is the largest and heaviest. Teacher Lisa says true. Vero says true. Fernando says true. Chio says what? The emperor penguin. It looks like most people are answering true here. Paula says false. Actually, according to the research that I did, because I did not know this answer, the emperor penguin is the tallest and the heaviest of all the penguins. Okay, one more question for everybody. This one is going to be a number answer, but still using either your finger or your thumb. It's going to be a number, I'll give you the hint, a number between 1 meter and 2 meters. So you're going to have to put a point likely, okay? So you might have to do a couple of entries. So the question is, how tall in meters can an emperor penguin grow to? How tall in meters can an emperor penguin grow to? And my hint is between 1 and 2 meters. So let's see what you come up with here. You might require a little bit more thought. A number between 1 and 2 meters. Yes, Lisa. We've got Vero says 1.2 meter and a half. Fernando, Paula. Ooh, Paula's getting really detailed. 1.57, 1.77. Wow, that would be taller than a lot of people, wouldn't it? I'm getting closer. Mariposa at 1.2. You are warm. We've got an answer here. Garsala El Habib, if I'm saying your name correctly, Garsala, 1.3 meters is correct. I'll give you my thumbs up. Well done. The emperor penguin can grow up to 1.3 meters. So we're talking a decent sized primary school child, right? Okay. Thank you for engaging, everybody. Well done. And I hope you've learned a little bit about penguins. I didn't know about that before I did the research. Hey, Juan, next, please. So why did I start the session this way? I have a few reasons why. Not so much because I think, you should be learning about penguins, but next, the first reason, hey, Juan, yep, the first reason is it's a fun fact, okay? So it is a fun fact, and if you ask somebody a fun fact kind of question where they don't know the answer, but it sounds like something that could be fun to guess, usually people will take a chance. And if I look in the comments section here, a lot of people were taking guesses at the true false and taking guesses at the number, right? Fernando knows, seems like he's a bit of an expert. The emperor penguin has the same mate for life. I did not know that, but that is a fun fact. Vero says to engage people. Yes, Vero, you're all right. I want to engage everybody. And hey, Juan, next, please. And so not only am I engaging you with a fun fact, but I gave you something that is extremely low risk. I assume here that most people don't know a lot about penguins, except for maybe Fernando. And the questions that I asked, I didn't ask what color are penguins. Penguins are black and white, true or false. I didn't ask that because most people would know that. I chose things that you're likely not going to know, but something that is not going to give you brain damage from thinking too hard. So it's low risk. And because it's low risk, everyone can take a chance. Hey, Juan, next, please. Also, something like this, if there are late students, let's imagine we're doing this presentation online today and someone is struggling with their signal and they're like, oh, I missed the first 3 or 4 minutes. What did I miss? Well, you didn't miss anything that is going to be directly connected to the content. So I like to start my sessions either online or even in the face-to-face with some kind of fun fact or some kind of warm-up that late students still won't miss anything. Okay, next, please. Also, to gather information about the student's attention, right? So Vero said to engage, and that's true. And if I'm doing something online, I can quickly look at the pace of the comment box and I can see, are people engaged? Or if I were in a face-to-face classroom and I asked a fun fact question, just by showing me hands, showing their collective thumb and fingers, how engaged are they? So because it's low risk, I should expect full engagement or certainly close to full engagement. And teacher Lisa says, yeah, low risk, so everyone can take a chance. Exactly. And finally, next, well, it's appealing, I think. Like, I chose penguins because I've never met someone who says I can't stand penguins, so I'm going to choose something that at the very least is appealing as a cute factor or something as an innocent factor. And I think starting with a fun fact like this is a good way to engage everybody. Okay, next, please. So we started off by I gave you some input. I gave you a receptive. You're listening to me, so your receptive skills of listening were engaged. But also, I asked you to do something with that information. I asked you to give some output, some production. So I gave you receptive, and I requested a productive. And in this case, I asked you to do it with your fingers or your thumbs, and that's kind of in line with the theme today. So I'm a big believer in synergy in language learning. 1 + 1 = 3 in the synergy. If you can get that receptive and the productive, I think you're going above what you can get with just focusing on one skill. Next, please. So here's the abstract. When you signed up for the session today, I don't know if you had a chance to read the abstract, but this is my goal for today's session. I want to make everybody here a little bit more aware that even though we're using a lot of our body parts already in language learning, that these days, especially more than perhaps ever before, our students are communicating in a different way, or in an additional way, let's say. And that involves a lot of fingers and thumbs. Outside the classroom, if people are using either keyboards or phones, and we'll be looking at texting especially today, the fingers and the thumbs are now essential body parts in how they are communicating in their L1, their first language. So can we get them, can we use this information, this knowledge, how they're communicating, and bring it into our classroom as an extra tool in our toolkit, let's say. So I hope this will be fun for you today, and that it will help us interact and connect with our students more at their level so that they will get more engaged in the classroom with us. Hey, Juan, next, please. So I'm going to ask 2 questions in a poll. So I'll ask the moderator, please bring up the first poll question. And in the chat box, you will be able to do this. The first one, do you text every day? You can put a Y for yes. And then if you put a Y, put a number. How many times per day are you texting? Just a roundabout guess. So Amy says, yes, she's texting every day. I do. Vero says yes. Yes, and all day. Rayhan says 10,000 times a day. That could be a new Guinness Book of World Records, Rayhan. More than 100, 5 or 6, 5, 10, 50. Yeah, honestly, I would really have to like manually calculate how many times a day, go into my chat box and everything to see. But I'm somebody who sleeps 6 hours a day. So let's say I'm awake 18 hours. Am I texting every hour? Certainly not. But are there some hours where I'm texting a lot between friends, family, work-related things? Yeah, minimum an hour, minimum 1 per hour, I would say on average. We've got a lot of yeses here, a lot of offens. Livia says all day long. Every day and all day, Anna says. Yeah. Fernando, a lot more than I want. Yeah, sometimes, you know what, Fernando, I agree with you. Sometimes I'm not texting. I leave a voice message because I'm just tired of texting. Yeah. So you as educators, as teachers in the classroom, imagine how much you're doing it. And now imagine how much your students are doing it. Unless you're teaching kindergarten, which they're not likely to be doing it yet, but you know, they're probably on some tablets that's from time to time. And so this action of fingers and thumbs, this is these kids now these days are digital natives, right? They're born with the digital, born into the digital world. And so this is not so odd for them to be communicating like this. We were always like this, or at least my generation was, but now this is quite a common thing. So that's why I think paying more attention to the fingers and the thumbs will be useful for us. Thank you, Haywan. Next, please. So some very useful information there. Thank you, everybody, for putting in your answers. So this leads us to acronyms and initialisms. So I'll just give you the definitions roughly. Okay, you're probably aware of what they are, but just as some background. An acronym, is where you take the first letter of a word, you take another word, the first letter, you put them together, and it comes up to something that kind of looks like a new word. And because of the format of a consonant vowel kind of configuration, you can actually pronounce it. So a good example of an acronym is ASAP, ASAP, as soon as possible. You can say that as a word. And in fact, I would say more people say ASAP than they say as soon as possible. Please call me ASAP. I might send a message, call me ASAP. Or I might say to my friend, call me tomorrow, ASAP, as soon as you get up. This kind of language. An initialism is more or less the same as an acronym, except you take the first letter just like you do an acronym, but when you put them together, it's not so easy to say. So an example could be FYI, for your information. I've never heard somebody try to say FYI like free or fee. It just doesn't work, right? So people will say FYI, And in fact, I hear people say FYI more often than I hear them say for your information. So ASAP, FYI, much more common these days than saying the full words, right? So, hey, Juan, if you could, next. So here's one that is really, really common. It's grown, and you'll be surprised maybe how old this one is, but it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. And in fact, I have friends that say lol. They don't say, oh, LOL. They say, lol. People say it as a word now, right? So it's an acronym. What does it stand for? If you could please put in the chat box. For you, what is LOL? Visola says, laughing out loud. She's fast on the keyboard. She must be using a keyboard, not a phone, I'm guessing. Yeah, laughing out loud, right? The acronym laughing out loud, it might be, some people say laughing out loud, laugh out loud, laughing. Some people say loudly, laughing out loudly. Yeah, everybody's got the laughing out loud, right? Like I said, it's ubiquitous. Everybody knows what this one is. Visola at laptop, yes. So next, please, hey, Juan. Would you be surprised that it's been around since the 1980s? Now, this is, again, I did some research, and according to Wikipedia, it was an intranet, not an internet. This was an intranet. There was some business that some guy put LOL, and he sent it to his colleagues. And then somebody there, they liked it, and they started using it. And then when the internet came along, people started using it that way, too. So since the 80s, started as a business, and then it spread to just laughing. They didn't want to laugh out loud in the office. But would you be even more surprised, or as surprised as I was? Larissa says, someone sent this to me today. Great. Good to see you. Would you be surprised that it goes back to the 1960s? Hey, Juan, next, please. In Britain, it was a term for little old lady. Now, I guess little old lady might have sounded a bit rude in Britain, so they would just say LOL. So imagine, they're driving down the street and, oh, LOL, get out of my way. This is how I imagined that it was used. So it's been around for a long, long time, and it's been so popularized, next please, that in 2011, Oxford officially made it a word, and they put it in the dictionary. So this is an example where acronyms are made just to help us communicate as our initialisms, but an acronym in this case, they can become an official part of the language. So LOL, lol is official now. So this could also maybe be a fun fact for you to share with your colleagues or your students somewhere down the road. All right, next please. And so we're going to take this concept of acronyms and initialisms, which are really useful when you're texting somebody, when you're using your fingers or your thumbs. And I'm going to see which ones you know, because I think teachers, we need to be aware of which ones our students are using, and also perhaps which ones we don't know, and we can get our students to teach us. And so, yeah, Lisa, exactly, a fun fact. And so our students, they can teach us some of the ones that perhaps we don't know. So let me check what you know. I'm going to ask in a moment. I'll ask K1 to bring them up one by one, and we'll go through this rather quickly, okay? And I'll just ask you to put in the chat box whichever ones you catch and if you think you know what they mean. I'll show you the answers after we go through all of them anyway. Hey, Juan, next. So the first one, we've got a number and some letters. What do you think this would be as the full word? What is this kind of hybrid acronym saying? What is the real word that it represents? Vero says, tonight she's fast, Vero on Facebook. Irish says tonight, yes. And I see most of you are spelling it as in the British spelling, T-O-N-I-G-H-T. Sometimes you see T-O-N-I-T-E these days in advertising, but I'm a little bit old school. I like the proper spelling. Thank you, everybody. Okay, hey, what next? BTW. Not for our Korean fans, BTS. This is BTW. Natalia says, huh? Vero says between. Nice guess, Vero, but no. Kidsplorer Playgroup. And Anara, you've got it. By the way. Next, please. BFF. Some of you may have one of these. BFF. Sometimes people sign this at the end of their message. Or they will say, this weekend I'm hanging out with my BFF. Vero, you've recovered. There you go. Yes, best friend forever. And some people make it plural, best friends forever, but best friend forever. Great. Next, please. Ooh, one of my Canadian friends, the first time he sent this to me, I thought, wow, he's not a digital native and he's using this. He's a digital immigrant and he's using CYA. What do you think this one can be used for? Antoine says, see you. Vera says, see you. Winnie, yes, exactly. See you. See ya. See ya. See you. Next. This is another hybrid where we've got some letters and a number. And I do remember using this when I was a kid. This is before smartphones, before the internet. We were using this one. Paula, nice, great. Vera Mariposa. Svetlana, you're getting in there a little bit behind. You got the CU, but you still got it. Thank you. So, yes, next one. So we've got the great. Now, this one, IMHO, you may see it as IMO sometimes. Winnie, thank you. You got a great name there, Winnie. That's my mom's name. IMHO or IMO, you might hear it, but IMHO you see a little bit more often. In my honest opinion, that's a good one. Karina says, in my humble opinion. And Karina, that's how I have heard it. Karina G, I've heard in my humble opinion. But honest could also work. Yeah, the cutest prince says it could be honest or humble. And I agree with that. Next. IDK. IDK. I see this one a lot on Twitter. The IDK. Antoine says, we don't use that in the Philippines. Yeah, perhaps not. And Antoine, you'll find that some of them are more popular in certain regions. Okay. Iman says, I don't know. Paula says, I declare. A little bit different. I don't know. Yeah, teacher Lisa, I don't know. Okay, next. And this one, a letter, a number, and a letter could be combined with the CYA. Later. Vero's got later. So we could be saying see ya and later, right? Okay, next, please. So there's the answers in case you didn't get them. And now let's try a bit of a flip, all right? Thank you, everybody, for your engagement. Well done. I'll give you my thumbs up. Next, please. What if we were to reverse it? The first one, next. If I said just kidding, what could you put as an acronym or as an initialism? JK, right? Next. We're going to go through these a little bit faster because it's less to type. No problem. Making jokes. Marion says making jokes. Mario says LMAO. I have a question for you, Mario. You can use it for that one. NP, yes, next. This one is used a lot and surprisingly by little kids. Now I said I'm here in Japan and I hear the oh my God, I hear this one a lot. Yeah, OMG, right. Next. This one, there could be different versions. Yeah, the OMG. Chio says OMG. Nguyen says OMG, yes. So for thanks, what could we say for thanks? Some people put TNX, yes, Kids Explorer. Some people put TKS. I've seen that too. I've seen Tia Vero. I've seen 2X or TX, sorry. Garcelle, I haven't seen just X, but I have seen variations of the THXS, etc. Right. And next. Tender loving care. I think there was actually a girls' R&B or hip hop group that had this initialism, tender loving care. Antoine says TLC. So maybe Antoine in the Philippines, maybe that's a popular one, right? Should ask my students. Good. Next. Too much information is a favorite of my mom's. She says this one all the time. Sometimes if I give her what I did the night before, she says, the cutest prince says, and Karina says, TMI. Yeah, don't tell me I don't want to know. TMI, too much information. Next. Okay, this one is, it really is just taking the first letter. Wish you were here. What could we say for wish you were here? Exactly, Paula. WIWH. And finally, Haywan, next. Now, this one you might be surprised because it doesn't have any of the letters in hugs and kisses, but we use 2 letters to represent hugs and kisses. What could it be? Karina. Well done, Karina. 2 thumbs up, Karina, for that one of Vero being super fast. Well done. Yeah. Next, Haywan, please. There's the answers, right? It's XOXO. I believe that the X is the kiss and the O is the hug. I think that's what it represents. Great. Well done, everybody. Thank you. You're engaged. Now, if you know these, great. And, you can teach your kids, get if they're an acronym, especially, the kids can be saying ASAP. The kids can saying FYI. These are natural ways of communicating. We're doing our thumbs and our fingers communicating anyway. So let's bring some of this language into our classroom. It'll help us connect even more with our students. Next, please. So what others do you use? I think we've seen some of them in there. Just think about ones you use and could you bring them into your classroom? Next, please. So this leads us to texting. All right, now texting specifically. Next, this is a video that I highly recommend when you have a chance to watch it. Go to YouTube. It's a Columbia professor of English named John McWhorter. And this part of this presentation, I was inspired by his YouTube presentation. Okay, so texting is killing language. JK, just joking. All right, next. What he says, some of the key points in the video that he says that I really like is that he says texting is a miraculous thing. Next. It's very loose in its structure. Next. And when people are talking, you don't, when you say something to your friend, you don't say, did you see the game yesterday? Exclamation point. You don't put punctuation in when you're talking. And a lot of times when we're texting, I'm not saying writing. We're not talking about essay, paragraph writing. We're talking texting. Very often people will use acronyms, initialisms, and they might not pay much attention to punctuation. So actually, and a great point that he makes is next. Next again. Is that he's saying that texting is basically you're using your fingers to talk. We're not writing exactly. It feels like it, but you're actually talking with your fingers or your thumb. So he labels it fingered speech. And when I first heard this, it kind of blew me away, actually. I was like, wow, yeah, texting isn't really writing. It's closer to talking or speaking. How can we use this in our classroom? If our kids are believing that they're talking like this, how can we bring that into our lessons? Next, please. Because what we're doing is we're writing the way we talk. And this is informal. And I think it's a big part of the way our kids communicate now. So let's acknowledge that and get them to do it in English in our classrooms. Next. So we have icons, pictographs, and so on. And, previously, before the technology came along, if we want to write a note to somebody to say, I love you, next, we would write a little heart like this. And something as abstract as love could be represented by a little heart. But unless you're an artist, you couldn't really draw much more than this. You might get creative, next, and draw an eye, but that would be just kind of freaky, right? Imagine drawing an eye and a heart and a U to somebody. That might be a little bit overkill, we say. Next. But now with technology, something as deep and as abstract as love can be represented perhaps even more deeply than the words we actually have. The emojis. So for example, on the left emoji here, this is an emoji that I use when I'm communicating with my wife. The one in the middle, I will use this when I'm communicating or referring to my 9-year-old daughter. Teacher Lisa, yeah, the eye is pretty creepy. I agree. It's more like spying, isn't it? And then on the right side, if I'm getting kind of fun with my friends, say, I'll see you tomorrow, I might do something like that. I'll use the one on the right. And so now we can represent love, and these are only 3. There are many, many more emojis that have love in them. So I think this is a great tool that we can use in our productive activities, our writing and our speaking. Next. And so here's an example of, I took a screenshot of some recent ones that I had used in WhatsApp. And so this is where the fingers and the thumbs are communication fun. Now, please note that in the second line, I've intentionally left this in here. If I were to share the ones from my phone with my students and say, hey, who can say some words about how I've been feeling recently? Or who can make a sentence about what I've been feeling recently? Be a little bit careful, because there might be a few in there that you don't want to share with your students. If you look at the second line over on the right side, I was communicating with my friends. I could have been joking. I could have been serious. I don't know. So you want to be selective at level and selective at the emojis you're going to share with your students. Okay. Next. So imagine I gave you a set of 4. Next. And I said, here are 4 that I've been feeling lately. I wonder what words you could use to guess what your teacher was feeling when he or she felt these kind of emojis. Okay, so in the chat box, I'll ask everybody, there are 4 emojis here. Just write down 4 words that you think best describe the emojis that I'm sharing with you here. I'll just give you about 30 seconds. What emojis could you use? What words could you use to describe the emojis? Fernando, thank you. 10 amazing ways to use emojis. Fantastic. That's what's great about these international online workshops, conferences, is people share great links. So what words could they be? So Lisa says, shock, love, cool, shake my head. Nice initialism, Lisa. Shock, love, cool, and shaking my head. Hero says one of them could be surprised. The cutest prince says embarrassed, loving, relaxed, regretful. Maybe I was feeling regretful that day. Rayhan says wonder, surprised, sure, love, sunbathing, okay, and oh no, OMG. Vera also says cool. Marianne says shocked, love, smart, and tired. Mon Monza says surprised, happy, and cool. Surprised, loving. It's interesting that a lot of people are saying surprised or stunned. So these emojis, even though they can be somewhat subjective, we can kind of guess what the person was feeling, right? They're close enough. They're that detailed. They're that good. Hark says mixed emotions. Yeah, a lot. Liliana says ashamed, love, relaxed. Oh no, sure. Okay, next, please. So what if they were this? Now, this is what I put. Shocked, in love, cool, and frustrated. Now, your goal as the student is not to get it right, because there's no real right. This is just how I was feeling. But it's to engage our students, to get some vocabulary out of them. You know, how do they think I was feeling? And if it's close enough, fantastic. But even if they don't get it, I'm still getting production from them. Just like the fun fact idea, they're engaged, right? Now, I would be targeting this level of engagement, single words, if I were dealing with students who are below level. And you probably know in English language teaching, we refer to below level students as the students who the content is pretty challenging for them, and they might need a little bit of help. So for those students, I would say, give me your 4 best words that describe these 4 emojis. But if I had students that were at level, meaning the content isn't too challenging, they might need a little bit of help from time to time, but basically they can do what's expected of them. Next, then I would ask them to perhaps put a sentence that is in present tense. Here there are 3 sentences, but they're rather simple, right? I am shocked. I'm in love, but my girlfriend likes a cool guy. I'm so frustrated. And so I would expect that level from them. If I were dealing with above level students where the content is maybe just a little bit too easy for them, then the task I would give them would be using the same vocabulary from the same emojis, but the expectations are a little bit higher, right? So next, please. So it could be something like, I want your sentences to have at least 2 different tenses, so I was shocked, I am in love, and so on. Yeah, Vera, yes, writing sentences. So thinking about the level of the students, if you had, elementary school, primary school students, and you want to stick just with single words, that's fine. But I prefer to look at it not so much about the age of expectation only, but the age plus, are they below, at, or above level? And we can give them different tasks to match their levels. Okay, next. So could we do a little bit more with this? Next. Imagine that you gave them 4 other ones. Okay, next. And here's the question. So what could you do? Well, I could be giving them 4. Or if I were dealing with secondary or high school students, perhaps I would say, you know, it's okay to bring in your phone today. Show your partner, show your friend 4 emojis. You select, or you can ask them to select whatever you want to do with it. But they are going to either write a few sentences about it or just focus on the oral. Just tell them you have a minute to think about what happened in this story and just talk. So yeah, Paulo, you said storytelling. Exactly. Could they make up a story? Could they make up an anecdote? And if you want to take it one step further, next, if you're using a course book, so here's an example from American English English file. It's more high school / university target. But in that series, which is very popular, it's very popular especially because of the videos that go along with it, Rob and Jenny, and they have this kind of international romance thing going on, right? So something happens in the video. So I could first have the students watch the video, take the content from the course book, and then they get to select the emojis that they believe best fit the scene. And if you want to take it to the next level more for speaking, you know, we got the receptive, now the productive, ask them to close the book and just focusing on the emojis, retell the story. The emojis can act as the prompt. Okay. So I think you can look at these different ways. You can take it from what has really happened, something fictional, or applying the emojis to the course book. So you can, there's many different ways you can approach this. Next, please. So in summary, because I want to make sure we have a little bit of time for a question if necessary. Next. So I personally, and I've seen a lot of teachers have success with integrating. So you can isolate the skills sometimes, but the more often you can take the receptive and the productive and put them together, the more, the better off you're going to be for their language learning. Next. Infusing lesson students, the students' current reality, right? So they are using their fingers and the thumbs, perhaps more than we realize. And the example of the heart and the love, like how deeply you can communicate with emojis, supplemented with acronyms and initialisms. I just gave you a few tips, some ideas today, but I think in your hands, you could think of a lot of different activities you could do with these. Next. And finally, this is the formula. So using your fingers and thumbs can be communication fun. So get at it. Include these as part of your lessons, either your input or getting some of their input. But either way, recognizing that they use these will help us a long way, connecting with them, getting them engaged, and therefore they will want to participate more in our lessons. Next. So there's the abstract that we started with. I showed you at the beginning of the session, and I hope I was able to motivate you a little bit with this simple equation, this algebraic equation, and I hope you were able to do some stuff in your classroom with it. Haywan and Joshua, next, please. I'm available if there's any questions that you guys may have, either in the comment box or otherwise.
Yes, if you have any questions, pop them into the comment box, and we've got a couple minutes for Chris to address anything.
I really appreciate everybody's comments in here. You guys you're very, very engaged. It's really nice to see. And I saw some other good ideas in here already. You're welcome.
Lots of thank yous. No questions as of yet, but
I'll take the thank yous any day of the week. It's not a problem. Never a problem for me. I guess the question I would have to people if they don't have any questions, Chio, heartbroken, yeah, is has anyone used emojis or any kind of icons in their lessons before? Vera, you're very welcome. Time flew. Yeah, I know. I had to speed up a little bit there. I felt that I didn't want to go over the time. Everybody, you're very, very welcome. If you want to know those WhatsApp, I checked. Most of those are copyright free, and if you don't use your phone, you can go to sites that do have emojis, and you can use those in your classroom. Different apps have them. WhatsApp has them. Line, which is popular here in Japan and Asia, they all have their unique emojis. And I think this is a great way to get the kids to feel like they're contributing, how they felt as well to talk about it.
Well, Chris, I don't see any questions. Just lots of thank yous. So job well done.
You're very welcome.
Thanks again, Chris.
Arigato. Thank you.
That wraps up the session. So everyone join me in thanking Chris and all of our other speakers.
Well done, everybody. Thank you too. Thanks, Josh.
All right. Thanks, Chris. I'm going to pop you off screen now.
Sounds good. See you, everybody. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. I hope you enjoyed all the sessions today. Why don't you pop in the comments? What's your biggest takeaway, or which session did you enjoy the most? I think they were all amazing. Very diverse range of topics covered too, from climate action to emojis. Thanks. Lots of thanks. Had a great time. Good. All of them. I like that. I liked all the sessions. Amazing. Well, if you did like the sessions, make sure you share these with a teaching colleagues, or one of your teaching colleagues, or all your teaching colleagues. Make sure that they know these types of events are happening and they can join next time. They can watch the recordings, etc. So, yeah, do share it on Twitter, Line, Facebook, whatever you're using, WhatsApp. Bring your colleagues into the fold. All right, well, that unfortunately wraps up our day with ELTOC, or our 2 days with ELTOC. So I hope you enjoyed all the sessions. Do hit those like buttons or the love buttons. Let us know how you thought about the sessions. We really want to make these sessions all about you. So tell us what you liked so we can improve and make these sessions more meaningful for you in your teaching. Also, don't forget to sign up on our waiting list so you can be the first to find out about these types of events and never miss another ELTOC. And also the QR code, I can never point to it. The one at the top of the screen, snap that with your phone. It'll take you to a page with a list of resources, including how to get your certificate. So do click that link, enter your details, and receive your certificate. They'll be sent within 10 business days after you submit your details to us. But do remember, the certificate is only available for 48 hours. So you got to finish that by 12th of December. That's Monday, 9 o'clock UTC. So if you want your certificate, do it as soon as possible. All right. Before we close the session, I just wanted to remind you of some of the ways you can continue to access the very best of OUP, including events like this, our publishing, our professional development, and also how you can get in touch with your closest OUP team. So again, the QR code at the top of the screen, or the link that's being repeatedly posted into the comments, that will take you to the page with all the resources from today, lots of the links to get certificates, how to get in touch with us, etc. Included on that page is a link to our free trial, to a free trial of some of our best-selling courses available through the Oxford English Hub. So by clicking that and entering your details, you'll get access to 90 days of student book, workbook, classroom presentation tool, online practice, teacher guides, etc. for many of our courses. So go ahead and redeem that and take advantage of that offer. There's also a link on that page for the Oxford Teachers Club. So again, that's another digital destination packed with extra practice activities and materials that you can use straight away in your lessons. And it's all free. So thousands of resources at your fingertips. So do make sure you join us at the Oxford Teachers Club. And also, I encourage you to explore professional development resources. So outside of ELTOC, you can continue to learn and keep progressing in your teaching. You'll find lots of resources there. Among them, the self-access professional development module. It's a mouthful. But anyways, there's a wide range of topics. These are courses that you can take anytime at your own pace. And again, it's free. It's there for you. So do take advantage of that. And then finally, we're proud to share with you our latest series of position and focus papers. So these are papers that focus on key issues shaping language learning and language education today, like technology, learner agency, global skills. These are all, again, free papers, and they provide evidence-based guidance and resources to help you improve your teaching. So do check those out as well. And then, as I said, if you want to make an inquiry or get in contact with your local Oxford University Press team or educational consultants, then do follow the link on that page and fill in the contact form on the website, and the team will be there to help connect you. Again, if you like the sessions, click the like buttons, click the love buttons. Those reactions, help us spread this type of event to more and more teachers and get more people involved. So it really helps us a lot. And don't forget to sign up to the waiting list so you can be the first person to hear about all of our future events. All right, that just about wraps up ELTOC. So thanks again to everyone who's joined us. And again, do share this with all the teachers that you think need this in their life. We love to share these types of events with teachers all around the world. So do spread the word, and we hope to see you at the next ELTOC. Yes, share this link with a friend. Well, thanks again, everyone. It's been a wonderful couple days, and I hope you all are able to join us for the next one. Again, all the links you need are in that QR code at the top, and this link here that's on the screen. So thanks again, and I will see you at the next ELTOC. Bye, everybody.